is getting settled, welcome. It is Mara Silverman here at the Triangle Aphasia Project once again, sitting all by myself in this beautiful facility that we have here in Cary, which is our hub. And I'm so glad that people could join us today for what is going to be something that we do every month. The TAP Talks program is a way where we can connect you with interests, people in the community, things that would help you. Last month, we were thrilled to have Dr. Adam Jacks join us and talk to us a little bit about research in aphasia. Had some really good follow-up on this, and we're looking forward to that committee starting. This month, we were really thrilled because, and I'm not sure everybody knows this, Rose, particularly, but Rose and I sat maybe a week before shutdown. I mean, it really was very close to
right there.
Yes. And we made some videos for everybody, and we were going to be, putting those out, and then COVID happened. And since many of the videos were about connecting with people in the real world and within 6 feet of each other, we kind of had to put those on hold. So we're thrilled that we can do this in a different format. So I would like to welcome you all again, whether you're on Facebook or you're here on the webinar. It looks like we have some participants here too. And just some housekeeping. The bathrooms are located, no, I'm just kidding. You don't care where the bathrooms are located. You will see a question and answer. You also see a chat box. Feel free to throw a question in there, either place. You can also put a comment on Facebook. I have some people that are going to help me look at Facebook and see if you have a question or a comment there. We are thrilled that you're here, and we're thrilled to have these two awesome ladies with us today too. I'm actually going to have them introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with our old hand here is Rose Reeve has been a part of TAP family for a little bit now, and I'm going to start with her introduction, and then she can pass it on to Sharon.
Hey everyone, so nice to see everyone. So Mara said my name is Rose. I own a counseling practice that's based in Cary, but I also support people through telehealth. In my counseling practice, I work exclusively with disabled adults and the people who love them. So I've been so fortunate to build a community and connection with TAP and get to support a number of the clients in different ways over the years, whether it's been through support groups or in individual counseling. So it's great to be here tonight. And as we talk about how we're all surviving and hopefully thriving through these really difficult times and the months to come, which will bring all new questions.
Absolutely. And I think we couldn't pick a better topic than mental health as we all really start to feel this fatigue and then have a little bit of hope and not sure where we're at. Yes. Sharon and I got to meet just very recently, and I was like, hey, how about joining us?
Well, hi, everyone. Again, I'm Maura. Thank you for having me. I'm Sharon Mosley, and I am also a licensed clinical mental health therapist. And I own a practice in Durham, North Carolina, the Fit Talk. But just the same as Rose, right now I'm practicing virtually. So I'm actually able to see folks from near and far, as long as you're in the state of North Carolina. And I also work with adults, particularly those who are having some challenges around anxiety and depression. And prior to COVID, I was also offering walk and talk therapy, and my practice is conveniently located near the American Tobacco Trail. And so I always encourage folks, if you can, to get out and move, and that way we can accomplish a couple things at once. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I love the whole concept behind Fit Talk and walk and talk. And, would you just mind sharing, because everyone knows Rose a little bit more, but can you just share, how you had come up with that concept?
Oh, wow. So the idea behind this really started with me. So a few years ago, I think there was a perfect storm. I'd gone to the doctor and was given some news that I didn't want to hear, but it was true. I just was not in great shape, and I was not as healthy as I thought I was, and I needed to make some lifestyle changes. And so I decided to do something about it, and I got moving, I got walking, I started running and working out. And then I was excited to share the good news with clients because I saw the difference that it really made with my own mental health and the intersection between physical health and mental health. And so from there, walk and talk therapy was really born.
I love that. I just love it. And you know what, Al, when we can get together again, we are going to go for long walks together. We're going to really share that wellness that we all miss, the connections that we have here. So I'm going to start, since we're talking about mental health in general, with one of the very first things we talked about when COVID hit and the pandemic started. And that is, was actually a little logo thing that Rose made, and it was so awesome. I wish I had it to flash up here right now, but it basically said social distancing is not the same as social isolation. And so I was wondering if Rose, if you can kind of talk to that as where we were before and where we are now.
Right. I mean, yeah, social distance is not the same as emotional distance, which is so easy and cute. No, it just rolls off the tongue, but my goodness, that's hard to live, right?
Yeah.
It's really tough. And it's interesting more to think back when we sat down, and it was like a week before COVID and we made those videos, and we were saying, well, I guess I'll see you again in a couple of weeks, right? They told us we have to do this 14 days.
Yes.
And here we are 10 months later, still living this reality. I know I said this the last time I came on, my parents literally live in the neighborhood next door. I haven't seen them in that time, except for, from the front porch, standing very, very far away in the driveway, that kind of thing. This is so hard. And, yes, there's something to be said for maintaining perspective. Yes, there's something to be said for being grateful for the things that we do have, whether that's our health and safety or, the relationships we are able to maintain. All of that is so valuable. But at the end of the day, we have to just acknowledge how difficult this is, and that the ambiguity of it is part of what makes it so tough. There is no, if we can just get to this one date, then everything changes. It goes back to normal, gets easier. We don't have that, right? It's this constant state of not knowing. And for so many people, it feels like the finish line just keeps moving farther and farther away. So with all of that, how do you maintain connection when you don't know for how long we're going to have to do that, right? I have to tell you, my clients have found some really ingenious ways to do that. I have one client whose family has literally started like a cooking group. And so one family member will pick out a recipe, send it to everybody, and then they all do a Zoom chat like this and all make the same meal at the same time, and talk about what they're doing and laugh at the people who start a kitchen fire and all that. And then they sit down and eat the meal together. What a great way to literally break bread when we can't be face to face. I have other clients who are, certainly people are playing games and finding ways to interact online. I think I mentioned this last time, but it's still going on. My kids' best friends who live next door, they have some pretty severe medical complexity. So like really, even with the mask, can't be in person.
Yeah.
Then these are my kids' best friends. And so they're playing games through the mailbox. They leave each other a little tic-tac-toe, or they leave each other a little, drawing challenge, draw me your favorite character from the show kind of thing. And we see them running back and forth, and that's how they're staying connected. So I think staying creative, staying hopeful, connecting around the things that are most important to us. Like I love the family who's doing the food. They've a couple of times tried, to make grandma's arugula or whatever.
Right. So that is so interesting, because when we set out to do our online groups for TAP, we had to shift and serve very quickly. We didn't, because our mission is reduce social isolation. So how do you reduce social isolation when you can't be together? Yeah. So instead of just doing our book clubs and our writing groups and our conversation groups, we've added a movie group and a TED Talk, and we do have a cook and gab with Nice. Abby. Yes. And they do a recipe, and we have hobbies. And so I think that's a really important part. And Sharon, I don't know if you've seen the same from your clients, but it seems that people are trying things they didn't do before, hobbies like, doing puzzles or some crafts they didn't do. Are you seeing that as well, Sharon?
Certainly, certainly. And we talk about that a lot because there are so many things that we know that we can't do right now. And we don't want to get bogged down on those things. But so we try to really think outside of the quote unquote box about things that we can do during this time. And so, being creative, sort of what Rose just mentioned, thinking about, I think prior to this, I never even thought about playing a game online in that kind of way via Zoom, but playing games online, connecting with folks, keeping social distancing, of course, but being outdoors. I'm having people who are going outside more than ever. That prior to this, really going outdoors was not necessarily something that was on the top of their list of things to do. But even if you're not going out for a run or on a trail, but just going out in your own yard.
Absolutely. I have, Steve and I really took up hiking. That was one of the things that we hadn't done before. I'm getting some questions, so I'm looking at here too, and Ron is our board chair. He reminded us that just in the scope of our groups, we have been doing some virtual vacations. So Christine is the group leader and they decide where they're going to go. And, for being isolated and not able to travel, they have gone to Rome and they've gone to Greece. And I think they're staying in North Carolina this month with all the things that are doing that. So that's a great, that going outside thing. Nature is very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for the things that people are experiencing, some of the things we're hearing, okay, it has been more than 10 months, it's been almost a year. So people are talking about feeling unmotivated, distracted. I get a lot of people saying, I can't focus. Like I get into work or I get to do this thing and I'm like, I'm going to work on this project. Is that normal? What's going on? Rose, you want to grab that one first?
Sure. So yes, very normal. And I think it makes a lot of sense. We all like to talk about our ability to multitask, but the truth, I'm sad to tell you, is that the human brain is actually not set up to multitask. We cannot attend to more than one thing at a time. What we can do is task switching. We can move very quickly back and forth between having our attention on multiple different things at the same time. Now that sounds like a great benefit, but the reality is it slows us down, it mentally fatigues us, and it makes us feel that distractibility and inability to concentrate. That's probably actually what that feeling is the mental fatigue that comes with trying to task switch. Now think about it. We all just had the whole world at our fingertips and suddenly it was taken away. And we were reduced to what was happening pretty much just within the four walls of our homes. So now we went from living out in the world to we're going to eat here, sleep here, work here, raise kids here, be the teachers here. Everything is happening in this very small space. So there's a lot less just physical room for our lives to happen and to have this is my dedicated space where I where I work out, I go to the gym, I work out, I focus on my workout, then I come home, right? We don't have that anymore. The room that I'm sitting in used to just be my office. Now it is the family gym. It's where the kids do schoolwork. It's, still my home office when the kids don't take priority. It's where anybody goes for privacy. If we need to make a phone call, that kind of thing, it's become such a multifunctional space. So it's easy to say, I get in here and I'm like, wait, why did I come in this room? This room now serves so many purposes. So I think, again, yeah, it's super normal that we're all experiencing. And one of the best ways to combat it, is just try to build some focus, right? So say I'm setting aside, 5 minutes to do this one thing and I'm not going to get distracted and do anything else. And, I can set myself a timer. And then I think, trying to do our best to set up spaces so that they really have dedicated purpose. I'm looking at, my husband built this amazing big desk for my kids to do virtual school from. But every day we have to go through it. No, we don't, we're going to move all the toys off the desk. We're going to clean the desk so that it's just for school. And we try to keep it that way as long as we can during the school day, but inevitably it gets covered in socks that come off and snacks that get eaten. And, which is all to say, this is hard. This thing that we're trying to do is very hard. So give yourself some grace and do your best to limit what you're trying to do in each space.
I love the idea of the dedicated spaces. And even
Mhm.
like, I've heard a couple of my friends say, I love my kids, love them, but I didn't intend to spend 24/7 with them, and they don't want to spend 24/7 with me. So finding some, I got my husband this little thing that goes on the door that says I'm recording, because he plays music and stuff. And he can just put that on and just leave him alone. It's kind of like a safe space where you can have some alone time. Because even though we're lonely, maybe surrounded by our family, we're also not really experienced a lot of downtime or alone time by ourselves.
Exactly.
Sharon, any other thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things I wanted to add was that you could, one of the things that my clients have found to be helpful, and so have I, is setting some structure into your day, starting the morning off with a bit of a routine. And that routine could be simply getting up, getting dressed, and then followed by some affirmations, or followed by 10 or 15 minutes of YouTube yoga, or with the breakfast routine, something that says that I'm starting the day, and something that doesn't cause more stress, but actually is something that will maybe help to alleviate some of the stressors that you feel, and it can set the tone.
I love that. So you would have like some type of structure that you follow that gives a little bit security,
Exactly.
I would guess.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything that goes on for hours, but it can really be something that is about 10 or 15 minutes, but something that just sets the tone for the day.
Yeah, very nice. I started a challenge on January 1st that was a morning meditation challenge that was on Insight Timer. And to me, it was really good to be able to say, I'm going to start my day this way every day. I will admit that one time I was getting ready and listening to it, which I don't think you're supposed to do when you're meditating. So fitting in this idea of structure, many of our clients have felt that we were, they were in a routine for getting better. They had a therapy, outpatient therapy, they had walks, they went to the gym, they went to TAP groups. Of course, now, we do offer some groups online, but some people can't get to those from technology standpoint. There's a lot of challenge to that. So can you guys talk to the rehab process intertwining with this idea of social isolation and then routine? Because I think that one of the things that we talked about in the beginning is that we're already trying to eliminate social isolation because people with aphasia already experience that. How would they keep the momentum going of a good, strong rehab process when, COVID is happening? I threw that one at you guys. Anyone want to grab that?
Sharon, do you want to go first on this one?
Well, my thought is that, so if they can't do the things the way that they were prior to COVID, face to face, and that these things have moved sort of online and virtually, is that, again, not to overwhelm yourself, because what I am learning right now in terms of the virtual world is that not only can we connect with folks virtually, but there's so many things that we can do virtually and so many meetings that we can attend that can fatigue us. And so really pacing yourself and thinking about, okay, so yes, now I don't necessarily have the time conflict because everything is offered virtually. I could do all of these things, but maybe just looking at it in terms of maybe the top one or two, and then spending some real time focusing on nurturing those relationships online with the folks who are also connecting online. And then maybe one or two people from those groups you can also connect with offline on your own as well, or maybe even some sort of social distance activity that you can do.
Some of our clients have initiated that on their own. Mm-hmm. They met each other at an online group and then have, call once a week. I think that people get that, also computer fatigue. I'm looking at the computer, my eyes are tired. So, I'll meet you for a walk. Or I know that during our Strides event, we had a lot of people get together, but not together at, masked and walking at a park. And I think that as the weather gets nicer, and people are feeling a little safer to do those things, that would be a really great idea, is to find connections that aren't always online, that you can take offline. I love that. Rose, any other thoughts on that?
I'm thinking, I got distracted listening to the answer, so I forgot the question a little bit, but I think it was about
go ahead.
The rehab process, right? And how do we stay motivated for rehab? I think rehab is inherently about building your resilience, right? And your ability to tolerate distress and to, continue to persevere in spite of that. So, there's no better time to test your resilience than right now when things are hard. So I loved what Sharon said about, prioritizing. With a lot of my clients who have aphasia, especially who have experienced stroke, I'll use a rest activity planner. And I'm encouraging everyone right now, like, hey, even though you're sitting in front of the computer and that feels inactive, that is active time. That is taking a ton of your processing energy. So like really give that energy expenditure its due and say that, yeah, I can't, exactly as Sharon said, I can't do everything, right? So I need to commit to doing those things which feel most important to my rehab efforts, and feel like they're going to fill me up the most in terms of my mental wellness, because otherwise you'll exhaust yourself trying to do too much, because it feels like you're inactive when the truth is it's very demanding.
I think it's so important what you said about like setting up a schedule too, and making sure that you are treating this still as your job, or your, making sure that your life is scheduled or time blocked in enough, and to put in rest and to put in meditation or a walk or, something physical outside, because I think that when you're home, you're like, you're just going to do what floats your boat, what comes up. But sitting down, like Sunday morning, my husband and I sit and we talk about the week, and we were laughing that week after week, we're like, do you have anything? No. Do you have anything? No. Nothing on the calendar, because normally we have basketball games to go to, lacrosse games to go to, courses that we might go to, a play, concerts, remember those? We would have all of these things, and we're going to have dinner with these people and whatever. So we don't want to look at an empty calendar. We want to make sure that we're feeling fulfilled. And I really like that thought about it. And some people are commenting. I just want to make sure that I'm also answering those things along. Kate had mentioned that what Sharon talked about, going outside, that she would actually walk out the front door, around the cul-de-sac, and come back and go to work. Just like, that's your focus, that's your start. Yeah. We had a TED Talk. So we have a TED Talk group. And today we talked about meditation. I have talked about it at length in our PPA support group and in our regular support group. But we, as you know, have an awesome counselor and yoga instructor and all things meditation client who is using this as their life participation, but has become a huge group leader for us, is Joelle Rogers. And Joelle does a meditation group every Saturday for TAP. And today at our TED Talk group, we talked about the power of meditation. And so maybe people are feeling like, well, I'm already home and kind of quiet and it's bored, why am I going to do meditation too? But can you guys talk about, does it help with specifically stress and anxiety and brain recovery? If you guys want to talk to that a minute.
Yes. You could talk about that for many minutes.
Right.
So yeah, why is meditation helpful for our mental health? So there's a couple reasons. Think about, meditation is building your ability to focus on the present moment, right? It's a mindfulness exercise. To be aware of your body and your thoughts and feelings just right now in this moment. This is a very broad oversimplification, but depression is the act of being stuck in the past, and anxiety is the act of being stuck in the future, right? But when we can increase our awareness on the present moment, it acts as a buffer. against both of those mental health concerns.
Oh, Rose, say that whole thing again. That was amazing. And you know what? I'm going to actually put it on the keywords because that was amazing. Can you say that again?
So again, very broad oversimplification here.
Obviously, yes.
But depression is being stuck on the past. It's holding on a little too strongly to the things which have already happened, which we cannot change.
Okay.
Anxiety is when we are stuck in the future. We're so focused on all the bad things that might happen that we're forgetting about what's happening right now and the power we have to influence that. When we can increase our mindfulness through exercises like meditation, what we're doing is staying focused on the present moment. And so that acts as sort of a buffer, we would call it a protective factor against both depression and anxiety. Because if you're here and now, you can't be there or then.
Oh, awesome. Could just
and then just like physiologically, the benefit that it has inside your body, we know it reduces your heart rate. It, again, calms anxiety and depression, has really good benefits on blood pressure. I'm sure Sharon can speak more to the physiological benefits, but when we meditate, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest, relax, and restore system. So it creates a calming effect in our whole body that goes, literally down to a cellular level. So it feels good, but it's also doing good inside.
Okay.
I agree with everything Rose just said, right? And I think sometimes we may feel as though, like to your point, Mara, that when you get home and meditate, well, what am I actually doing? Is it even working? Like, what is this? I don't feel the effect from this right now. But, I would say to you to continue with the practice, right? You cannot get it wrong.
Yes.
As long as you are continuing with the practice. And so, no, you may not be able to just meditate for 45 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, right? But you may be able to do this starting out for 5 minutes. And yes, your mind may wander. That's okay. If your mind wanders, just acknowledge that and then bring yourself back and come back to the present moment. So it's okay, because we all wander from time to time. We all daydream from time to time, but that's okay also. And if you continue to do this, just as Rose mentioned, is that you will start to see the other effects in terms of being calmer, lowering of your blood pressure, and really just being able to clear your mind from the clutter.
Yes.
From the clutter of all the things in the world that are happening, all the things that you feel like you have to attend to. It gives you a space to be in this moment.
Yeah. It's so great. And, somebody called it today, they were taming the monkeys, the monkeys were going around and around and around, and they were trying to tame them. I also like that, Sharon, when you talked about their routine, you talked about maybe affirmations, or some people start with a devotion or a prayer, music, playing music, listening to music. Meditation, as we talked about today, does not need to be sitting cross-legged, with a candle and going, although I have a little setup like that, that it could be as important as, just taking a time and reading something. It can be guided or not guided, or going out in nature.
Yes.
Just paying attention to nature. So I love that you brought that up. A lot of people use it to help go to sleep. There was some comments that we're getting on that. Well, I want to kind of continue on this wellness thing, because I think that your discussion of anxiety and depression is very real, Rose, and I think that people are understanding that there's particularly more of that now. Are we seeing, not just with people with stroke and recovering and, with medical concerns and all of because we have a vulnerable population for sure, but are we in general seeing more anxiety, is your business blooming right now? Like, what's happening?
I wish it weren't the case, but every therapist I know is full right now. These are tough times, and none of us have any guidelines or guidance on how to do this. And, we know these kinds of strategies that in general are good for our mental wellness, but again, I think it's just the ambiguity of the situation that makes it so difficult. And of course, it's hard when different family members may have different values around what's the right thing to be doing here. And it's been so stressful for everyone. So yes, if people listening are thinking, I seem more irritable than usual, I'm not sleeping well, I'm eating too much or too little, or any of those kinds of signs and symptoms, yes, it very well could be anxiety and depression brought on by this unforeseeable, difficult circumstance that is, truly global, right? There's no one in the world that isn't affected by this. And the knowledge of that can just make it feel so much weightier. And then of course we here, everything that's going on in our country causes extra strife, and we never know what we're going to see when we turn on the news or go on social media, which of course is one of, I think, the most helpful strategies is to really be intentional about the times of day that you choose to engage with the news and social media.
Yes.
Don't do it right before you go to your TAP group and want to be at your best. If you may see something that puts you not at your best. So, making those kinds of choices about, I don't get to choose what I'm going to read in the news, but I do get to choose when I'm going to engage with it and when I'm going to read it. But yes,
that's so important. I did in part of this morning meditation, they talked about a Harvard study that said, if you listen to negative news in the morning, that can impact your day 6 to 7 hours later.
Yep.
Could be still impacting your mood, which of course in tight quarters affects everybody else's mood. So yes. I really love that idea of shutting off social media and deciding when and how long you're going to listen to that in it, or news in general. But to that point, it isn't just about the pandemic. This is a period of time in our country that has social unrest, racial injustice. Everything has, talk about the perfect storm, Sharon, as you were mentioning before, is that you really don't know what else could go wrong. There's such division in our country. People are arguing with family, who have different viewpoints and different thoughts. And, there's this other energy that's happening where we just want everything. We just want to fix everything. Which is, can we, go back? No one wants to go back. Everyone wants to move forward. And so I think it is, it's important to understand that we can't, that this is multifactorial of what's going on with mental health. Yes, it's a pandemic, but it is a lot of other things that are happening. Does anyone else want to talk to that?
Well, also, I just want to add that this is probably the perfect time to practice boundary setting. And so as much as some of us may be feeling socially isolated and we want to find ways to stay engaged, there's also a fine line. So thinking about practicing boundary setting, because you'll have to do that in order to take care of yourself. So you'll always think about, how do I find ways to take care of me? What are the things that will bring me joy and happiness during this time? And so, Maura, I think you mentioned like some folks are, naturally so just getting into disagreements with family members, or getting into disagreements with family members that they've never disagreed with before in the past. Yeah. And just finding out that they are, light years away from their neighbors or whatever, right? And so just thinking about, doesn't mean that I'm not going to interact with my family. Doesn't mean that I'm no longer going to speak to my neighbor, but I will choose, again, to Rose's point, how and when we interact, because I may know that maybe in the mornings isn't going to be a good time for us to interact, because there may be something that's mentioned that's upsetting to me. And so I may wait until later in the day, because I do want to check in on this person, or I want to, hear from them, but then I can stay in control of that.
Oh, I love that. That's so important to set those boundaries. You got a visitor, Rose.
Sorry. I can move her if she's bothering anybody, but she wants to say hi.
Every time we say walk, she gets a little, excited. She
just turned back around.
actually, you brought up a really good thing that I wanted to bring up to the whole point and the whole discussion is you talked about taking care of yourself. We are, and I'm throwing myself under the bus here too, because when my mom was here, I was a caretaker. Even though she wasn't always living under my roof, I was a caretaker. And now these people that normally had some, maybe outside support, engaging, somebody coming in and helping care for the person that they love, now are 24/7 caretaking. I got a question earlier that somebody had sent me that says, I find myself getting very impatient with my sister. She can't get the words out. I'm too busy. I'm tired. I know I'm supposed to be a good caregiver, but I'm exhausted and I'm finding myself very short-tempered with her. So I wonder if you guys can kind of talk to being a caregiver in the middle of kind of also, I think they all hear what you're saying, but the practicality of it is more challenging.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Sharon, if that's easier for you. So what I'm talking about with a lot of my clients who are caregivers is really assessing the risk, I guess, the safety risk of allowing someone else into the home versus the risk to your relationship and your mental health if you choose not to do that, right? And it's certainly not my place to say what's best for anyone else, but if and it's going to be different for everybody. But if we say, okay, this is your risk for COVID, and this is your your other interactions in the world and the things that you're comfortable or not comfortable to do. And if we were to add 1 or 2 more people to that inner circle and, really talk with them about what risks you want or not want them to be taking, it's possible to find additional care that everybody is comfortable with. So that would be my first point, to really look at, again, we don't know how much longer this will continue, right? And what feels safe for each family is going to be different. But if you're really feeling that fatigue, I would ask, what is at risk if you don't let somebody else in to assist you? And then beyond that, it's so funny, again, when I'm meeting with people for counseling, how often what we're talking about is just going back to the basics, right? You're frustrated with your sister. Well, are you really doing everything that you learned in that learning to speak aphasia training? Or are you, just assuming she knows the routine, we're around each other so much, I don't need to write things down anymore?
Thanks for the plug, Rose.
Yes.
Thanks for the plug.
I think sometimes we get so tired and we assume that things are in a different place than where they are, but your loved one's needs have not necessarily changed. If anything, they may have increased with the isolation of the past year. So making sure that you're writing things down, you're giving those visual aids, you're providing the cues that they need to be able to do the things that you're hoping they can do, and looking for and I'll let Sharon jump in, but just other ways to get back to the basics.
I just want to say I really appreciate that, and I think the people that were in the group last week we were running a peer-led support group, thanks to you and your advice and support in that. But when we were talking about it, one of our clients' spouses were saying that the person kept asking the same question over, and this is a person who is starting to have some dementia, and they're asking the same question over and over. And everything in me wanted to go, were you writing it down? Were you writing it down? But I think you're really right, is that we kind of feel like we're in this kind of alternate universe and that we don't need to maybe do some of the same things. But I like to compare it to, would you let that person walk into the kitchen if they needed a walker and just say, I'll hold your walker here, go, you'll be fine? Of course not. They need that support so they don't fall. Or would you, not use an assisted cutting board and say, go at it, here's the knife, of course not. So these communication strategies that you learn in Learning to Speak Aphasia, which is this coming Sunday, by the by, and every month, those simple things like keywords make a huge difference in supporting the person communicating and will reduce your frustration. So Thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned that. Sharon, anything other thoughts about that kind of caregiving piece?
Well, one of the first things that came to my mind is You can't pour from an empty vessel. And so if you are not taking a moment to put yourself into the equation, it becomes really difficult to do the very thing that you set out to do, that you really want to do, and to support your friends and loved ones in that sort of way. So you really have to, even when you think about going back to the basics, and maybe it can become really frustrating, it's even if it's just for 1 or 2 seconds, is to be able to stop maybe in that moment, if you can, and just do some deep breathing. Do something deep breathing that really only takes a few seconds. And you will be amazed at how that can really reset things, because it really is very simple. But it's also something that I don't think that we think about that often, and maybe we take it for granted. But being able to do a 3 or 4 count deep breathing can really allow you to just look at the situation differently.
That's awesome. Nothing needs to be done right this second. You can pause and put your feet on the ground and feel and see and do those little tricks for anxiety and depression that we all learn about. So caregiving is definitely something that multiple people asked about. There is a question about, kind of sadness, just general sadness over loss, lost plans. Maybe somebody had said, I'm not just sad, I feel angry about our lost plans and dreams. And now with COVID, I don't foresee being able to do these things at all. You keep talking about kind of that arbitrariness of the COVID, like when are we going to get back to these things? Do we have a date, please? Like, we'll be fine if you give an idea of when it's going to go to, but if we don't have that, how do we find the hope?
My answer may sound counterintuitive, but we can't find hope until we fully move through our grief and our anger and experience them. It is sad. The trips we haven't been able to take, the weddings that have had to be postponed indefinitely. These things are real and they're hard and they're difficult, and it's sad, and it's okay to be sad and angry about those things. When you fully explore your anger and your sadness and give yourself, time on purpose to grieve, which sounds weird sometimes to say, like, I want you to schedule time to be sad. I want you to make time every day to be sad. That increases our perspective, right? Positivity just for the sake of, I'm going to hope and be positive, tends to backfire. The more we try to tell one of our emotions that they're wrong and that they don't belong and that they're not justified, typically that only serves to make them stronger, right? So, one exercise that I like to give my clients to do, I say at the end of every day, just take a minute, go look at yourself in the mirror, do that cleansing deep breath that Sharon was talking about, and then say out loud, 2 things that happened today that made me very sad were whatever they were, right? Today's the day we would have had the championship game and nobody's there. Nobody gets to go watch it, that kind of thing. And, 2 things today that I'm grateful for having experienced are this and this, right? And so again, it's not about just positivity. If you just try to focus on the good, that backfires. You have to acknowledge it all, build perspective, right? That it's okay for grief and gratitude to exist in the same space. Our feelings get to be a little more complicated, I think, than we sometimes give them credit for.
It's a great piece to remember, because when everything's going wrong, people think it's hard to find gratitude, but putting both of those in the same space and understanding that it's not all, clouds, but it's not all sunshine and puppies either. So really, really important. One of the clients asked, or one of the people that are watching asked about mood swings and if that was normal. Is it normal, not just for stroke recovery and people with aphasia, but in general with what's going on? What's going on with mood swings? If you're not in your mid-50s and you're a woman, other than that, what's happening?
Sharon, do you want to jump in on that one?
Well, it really goes back to what this entire discussion has been around, is COVID. We're living in a really challenging, uncertain time. And we don't have any definite dates around this. And so when that happens, there's a range of emotions that we experience, and in terms of how it impacts our mood. And so, you know, without really any real necessary reason why, we may experience sadness. We may experience, you know, loneliness. We may experience just, you know, feeling content one day, and even feeling pleasure and happiness, back to a really low mood the next day. And so the pendulum really starts to swing all over the place, because that's where we are right now as a society. And so it really is, it becomes what happens when we start to feel anxious and have some depressive symptoms. It doesn't mean that we, you know, have reached a clinical diagnosis of anxiety or depression, but we may start to exhibit some of those same symptoms. And that's really what's happening.
Yeah, I like the idea of the pendulum, you know, that sometimes it goes like way on the other side, and then sometimes it goes, you know, kind of falls and goes somewhere in the middle.
Maura, do we have the ability to share our screens or no?
Yeah, I can do that for you.
That would be awesome, because I want to show everybody a tool that I really like to use when people are describing themselves as having mood swings.
Go ahead. You should be all set.
So how do I?
Just go down to share screen.
There it is. Okay. All right. Can everybody see this beautiful colored wheel on my screen?
Yes. Wow, that's a lot of synonyms right there.
But they're not.
Pathologist's dream. I love that.
They are individual, discrete emotions. They're just a handful of the thousands of emotions that we humans can experience. But when people tell me that they are having mood swings, I like to give them a tool like this. And there are simplified ones that are great to use for clients with aphasia. I actually have one that I made myself that I can certainly send to Maura.
Would love that. Thank you.
Send out to people. It's just kind of the basic 6 that you see in the middle, or 7. But to identify where actually am I at, right? Because what I'm calling a mood swing may actually just be experiencing a wide range of emotions, which I think sometimes people feel uncomfortable with. But again, when we're living life kind of in a little bit of a box right now, we may just all be feeling our feelings a little bit more than we have in the past, because there aren't as many distractions available, right? So we're noticing all of the things that we're feeling and all of the choices that we're making as a result. So again, Maura, I'm certainly happy to send this your way as well if we want to share with people afterwards, but it can be really helpful to have this on hand, you know, even if you're having one of those days where you say, I feel off, and you can look at it and say, oh, I'm feeling inadequate, right? Because of something that somebody said. And to be able to put a name to a feeling sometimes is a big part of the battle to working through that feeling.
I think your idea too, and both of you have said this, about acknowledging those negative feelings too, to be heard. You know, I think that sometimes people just want to know that you heard them, you know, that they're validating that I feel crappy, you know, not just necessarily trying to cheer you up. And I'm really good at that. I can be like a you know, cheerleader, but I have to step back and say, you know, wow, that really sounds awful. And that must really, you know, be a hard thing you're going through. Tell me more about it. And just getting that out, like talking to somebody about it. So, you know, getting a counselor like one of you got, you know, somebody who can listen, somebody who can give you support and advice. What other suggestions do you have in dealing because I think that as we wrap up, we have about 10 more minutes. I want to talk to this, and then I have one more other little topic. If you all that are out there in Facebook land or here on the webinar want to add a question, a thought, please go ahead and do that in the chat box or in the question and answer, and then in the comment section on Facebook. So anything to that, what I was just talking about, kind of covering from what you were saying about the emotions, acknowledging them.
Yes, and to take it a step further, to build our own ability to do that for ourselves, right? Because do you ever have the experience of, I had a really stressful day at work, and I came home and I talked to, someone in my household about it, and they just tried to fix my problem. But it's like, I don't need you to fix my problem. I know how to do my job. I just needed you to listen and agree with me that that would be a tough spot to be in. So, and then sometimes I have one of those too,
Okay.
But yeah, so like, if you're not going to get it from if the person who you love just wants to fix your problems and doesn't totally get it, learning to validate yourself, learning to, I'm feeling, I'm still looking at my feelings wheel here. I'm feeling really insignificant. And it makes sense that I would feel that way, because two of my friends forgot my birthday. And yeah, I know it's COVID, and yeah, I know, everybody's schedules are crazy right now, but it doesn't feel good to be forgotten, and to be able to say that to yourself and to believe that it's true.
That's kind of self-care, isn't it?
100%. Yes. If people want more resources on that, there's a fantastic book called Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. It's a great resource. She has a wonderful website with tons of, worksheets and tools and things as well. So highly recommend.
So what I'm going to do is, I noticed that people are asking about meditation apps and things too. What I'll do is, I have written these things down. I will put together some resources of things that these ladies have recommended for us, and also their contact information. Also, some of the apps and things, and I will send it out and make sure that everybody has those resources.
Awesome.
So before we go to that, one of the things I have actually found a pleasant distraction, or to exactly what you were speaking of, Rose, is, and what Sharon, you were saying about getting together offline but online, is there's an app called Marco Polo. And somebody had told me about it. This is mine on my phone. It looks like a little beach ball. Because I guess you play it in the pool. Marco Polo. So what it is you can connect with someone visually. So you can send them a little video and kind of update them, tell them what's going on, and then they can get to it when they get to it. So it's not sending them a text or a video message, but it's like a video phone call without being synchronous. And I have to tell you that it has really helped with what you just talked about, Rose, is I want to say how stressed I am, or how I'm feeling about something, or how excited I am about something. And I can go and do that to, like, my sister and my friend. And then when she has time, she'll write back. And then it's like this kind of ongoing conversation. I think it's also really excellent for people with aphasia, because you can spend time kind of digesting what they said, make notes, and then come up with your response and go back. So I'm going to include that one. I have gotten such, wonderful ways of connecting with family. You can set up groups too. Like you can have your families all on Marco, and it's nice. So the last question, or kind of comments, I don't see a lot more questions. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the question and answer, or you can put them on Facebook. Abby's checking that for me. But the one thing that everybody's kind of talking about now is there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I'm seeing, and I hope you guys are as well. I feel like the idea that the vaccines are becoming available, that people will be safer, that we want to start talking about re-engagement eventually. And what are some of the things that, for example, fear that might be involved in that? And we have gotten so overprotective of like keeping ourselves in this like bubble, and we have a pod that we are, only communicating with. How do we get over that? I remember in our initial task force, we talked about, well, when will you be ready to get back together? And one couple said, whenever you're ready. And the other couple said, when there's a vaccine. And you have to realize that these are going to be, there's a span of different comfort levels that people are going to have. And at that point, the vaccine didn't even, there wasn't even a dream for us. So it's really nice that that's here. But what do you guys think about tiptoeing back into life and how that's going to feel?
I think you pretty much summed it up. It's just that everyone will interpret it differently, and that's okay. you may interpret getting back and re-engaging as, you know, as soon as the vaccine is here, and someone else may interpret that as soon as the temperature breaks and it gets a little warmer. So everyone will have maybe a different interpretation of it. That's okay. Just being able to respect that it may be different than your interpretation. And that if you feel like only taking baby steps, that's fine. And tiptoeing, that's perfectly fine. If you do decide to just sort of jump into this, you know, sort of thinking about this the same as maybe you've been thinking about your comfort level now in terms of social distancing and what that looks like for you in terms of jumping in. And that while you may be ready to do all of these things at once, these, you know, all the venues that we were accustomed to going to just may not be open. And if they are, it may look different in terms of the requirements to come in or to attend a specific event. And so keeping those things in mind, because it can become, I think, really overwhelming with the thought that, you know, we're going to get the vaccine and then we can start planning all these trips and we can do all these things. And then until you learn that there's going to be a lot more rules around how we engage.
Yeah, it's really important.
What I'm hearing in my office, and so maybe this is the experience of people listening, is, you know, within families, within couples, there's generally one person who's a little more risk averse and one person who's just needing a little more safety feel, right? And so in my counseling with whichever partner I happen to be meeting with, you know, for the people who are a little more risk tolerant and are ready to get out there and just want to be back to normal, I'm trying to remind them, you know, think of a time in your life when you were truly scared, when you genuinely felt like your safety was threatened, and understand that that is how your partner or your parent or your child or whatever is feeling right now. And I'm really trying to encourage people, to the extent that they can, to try to operate from that more anxious, fearful person's line of reasoning, right? So that everybody in the relationship feels safety and commitment and trust. And that, you know, to understand that that person is allowed to change their mind. That's been a really big thing. I hear a lot of people very like, I don't even want to tell my husband when I'll feel ready because so much has changed already. What if that changes and then he's angry at me, you know, and he feels like I lied to him? And to really just come at it from a place of compassion, of knowing that, again, we're just all doing our best and we're allowed to have our thoughts and feelings change. They certainly have to date. So I fully expect that that will happen as we all talk about what does it look like to go back out into the world. So just lots of communication, lots of understanding, lots of working hard to see things from the other person's perspective. I think that's the only way we get through this.
And as far as from the TAP family, we fully anticipate, because of all the great things we learned about virtual therapy, virtual programming, that we will keep a component of that. So we will be, you know, attempting to meet people where they're at. And I love that you know, kind of finished with that whole idea of compassion, and know that your TAP family is here for you all, and that you need to keep letting us know what you need. Anything that you need, please keep us in mind. So as we're going to wrap up now, I told you it was going to go like this. These TAP Talks always do, but I think it was the beautiful, you know, bouncing back of ideas and thoughts between two brilliant women, and your thoughts on mental health have been, you know, reassuring for me. So I hope also for those of you out there in either this webinar or the Facebook land. Any final comment that you, or word of advice for our clients as we wrap up, Sharon?
I think it's all been said, but I'll just reiterate: grace. Give yourself grace.
Give yourself grace. Yeah. Rose?
I think to sum it up, just, yeah, stick to the basics of compassion, forgiveness, and everything that you have learned about aphasia. That those are going to be the keys to continuing to thrive.
Awesome. And we will continue to thrive. We'll continue to serve. And please continue to give us feedback, and if there's other books or resources that you came up with. The book that Rose mentioned, I will send out. Tanya was asking about, it's called Self-Compassion. And who is the author of that?
It's Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F.
Okay, and I will include that in the summary, but thank you all. You were amazing, and I'm so blessed that you guys are part of the TAP family. I don't know if you know this, Sharon, but we've already adopted you as part of the TAP family, so welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, and y'all take care. Stay safe. We love you. Wear your mask, and we'll be together again soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.